The old fisherman stood on the shore of Salamis, watching smoke rise from Athens across the water. His city was burning. Everything he had ever known, the marketplace where his father sold fish, the temple where his daughter was married, the house where his grandchildren were born, all of it was ash now. The Persians had come. And everyone said it was over. The Spartans, those immortal warriors, had fallen at Thermopylae. 300 heroes buried under Persian steel. King Leonidas himself dead. If the Spartans couldn't stop them, who could? The old man turned to look at the women and children huddled behind him on the beach. Mothers clutching babies. Old men too weak to fight. Young girls who would become slaves if Greece fell. His own grandson, barely 10 years old, looked up at him with terrified eyes. "Grandfather, are the Persians coming here too?" The old man didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. Because the truth was simple and terrible. Yes, they were coming. And there was nowhere left to run. Xerxes, king of kings, lord of Persia, stood in the ruins of Athens and smiled. This was the city that had dared to defy him. That had burned Sardis. That had helped the Greek rebels in Ionia. Now it was nothing. Smoke. Rubble. The screams of the few who hadn't escaped in time. His army, the largest the world had ever seen, stretched as far as the eye could see. Persians in their scaled armor, Medes with their curved swords, immortals in their golden masks, Babylonians, Egyptians, Phoenicians, Indians, Ethiopians, 46 nations bowed to Xerxes. And now, Greece would bow too. His admiral approached, a Phoenician named Ariobarzanes, his half-brother. "My lord, the Greek fleet hides in the straits of Salamis. Should we attack?" Xerxes looked across the water. He could see the island, see the smoke from the refugee camps. "How many ships do they have?" "Perhaps 370, my lord." "And we have?" "Over 1,000, my lord. We outnumber them 3-1. Xerxes smiled. But it was a cold smile, calculating. The straits are narrow, treacherous. Why should we risk our fleet when we can simply wait? They have nowhere to go. No food, no reinforcements. Let them starve. Ariobarzanes bowed. "As you command, my lord." But as he walked away, Xerxes felt something he rarely felt. Uncertainty. Greece should have fallen by now. It should have been easy. But it wasn't. These people, these small, divided city-states, they kept fighting. Even when it was hopeless. Even when it was suicide. Why? On the beach of Salamis, Themistocles stood among his captains. He was 45 years old. His hair was graying. His hands bore the scars of a lifetime at sea. He was not a king, not a hero of legend, just a politician who had risen from a common family through cunning and intelligence. But right now, he was the only hope Greece had left. The other Greek commanders argued around him, shouting, panicking. "We should retreat to the Isthmus of Corinth. We should abandon the fleet and fight on land. We should surrender before they slaughter us all." Themistocles listened to them scream at each other, and he felt something break inside him. These were supposed to be leaders, warriors, defenders of Greece. Instead, they were children, terrified of the dark. He stood up. Enough. The tent went silent. Themistocles looked at each man in turn, into their eyes, seeing their fear, their desperation. "You want to run?" he said quietly. "Fine. Run. Abandon your families. Abandon your cities. Abandon everything your fathers built." He pointed out toward the water, toward the Persian fleet in the distance. "But know this, they will follow you. Xerxes will hunt you down like animals. He will burn every city, enslave every woman, kill every child. There is no surrender. There is no mercy. There is only one question. Do we die on our knees, or do we die fighting?" One of the Spartan commanders, Eurybiades, stood up. "The Spartans do not flee. But what you're suggesting is suicide. We cannot win against 1,000 ships." Themistocles smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of a man who had already accepted death. You're right. We cannot win, he paused. Unless we make them fight where numbers don't matter, where their size becomes their weakness. He unrolled a map of the straits. Here, these narrow waters. They'll be packed in like cattle, unable to maneuver, crashing into each other. And our ships, faster, lighter, will cut through them like wolves among sheep. Another commander shook his head. But why would Xerxes risk his fleet in the straits? He's not stupid. He'll wait us out. Themistocles met his eyes. Because we're going to lie to him. That night, Sisinus prepared to leave. He was Themistocles' most trusted servant. A Persian by birth, captured as a boy, raised in Athens. He had taught Themistocles' children, had eaten at his table. And now Themistocles was asking him to walk into the lion's den. You don't have to do this, Themistocles said quietly. If they discover you're lying, they'll torture you to death. Sisinus smiled. He was an old man now. His beard was white. His hands trembled. My lord, Athens took me in when I had nothing. Greece gave me a home, a family, a life. He looked out at the Persian campfires burning across the water. I was born Persian, but I will die Greek. Themistocles gripped his shoulder. Tell them the Greek commanders are arguing. Tell them we plan to flee at midnight. Tell them if they block the straits now, they'll trap us all. Sisinus nodded. And if they believe me, then tomorrow we change the world. Sisinus rode alone across the dark water. His heart pounded. Every shadow looked like a Persian warship. Every sound was a soldier's footstep. He reached the Persian camp. Guards seized him immediately, dragging him before the officers. I bring a message for the great king, he said in Persian. From the Greek fleet. They took him to Xerxes' tent. The king of kings sat on a throne of gold even here, even in a military camp. His robes were purple. His crown glittered with jewels. He looked at Sisinus the way a man looks at an insect. Speak. Sisinus bowed low. His voice was steady, but inside he was screaming. Great king, I am the servant of Themistocles, but I have come to serve you, because I know which side will win this war. Xerxes leaned forward slightly. Go on. The Greek commanders are terrified. They argue like children. Half want to flee to Corinth, half want to surrender. Themistocles cannot control them. They plan to scatter tonight, each ship for itself. He paused, letting the lie sink in. But if you block the western and eastern passages of the straits now, you will trap them all. By dawn, the Greek fleet will be yours, and Greece will fall. Xerxes studied him for a long moment. Sisinus could feel the weight of that stare, could see the intelligence behind those cold eyes. Then Xerxes smiled. You are either very brave or very foolish. I am neither, great king. I am simply a man who wishes to survive. Xerxes laughed. It was a sound without warmth. Ariobanes. His admiral entered immediately. Send the Egyptian squadron to block the western passage. Send the Phoenicians and Ionians to the eastern entrance. I want every ship in position before midnight. The Greeks must not escape. Ariobanes bowed and left. Xerxes turned back to Sisinus. If you have lied to me, old man, I will have you skinned alive. Sisinus bowed again, his legs shaking. I do not lie, great king. But as he was escorted out, he whispered a prayer to Athena. Let this work, please gods, let this work. All night, the Persian fleet moved into position. Over 1,000 warships, cramming into the narrow straits. The sound of wood creaking, oars splashing, men cursing in a dozen languages filled the darkness. On the Greek side, Themistocles stood at the bow of his ship and watched. Around him, his crew was silent. 3 banks of rowers sat at their oars, waiting. The bronze ram at the front of the ship gleamed in the moonlight. These were not professional soldiers. They were farmers. fishermen, craftsmen, men who had left their families to fight. One of the younger rowers, a boy barely 18, spoke up. "Sir, are we really going to win?" Themistocles looked at him, saw the fear in his eyes, the hope. He could have lied, could have promised victory. Instead, he told the truth. "I don't know, son. Maybe we'll all die tomorrow. Maybe the Persians will slaughter us to the last man." He paused. "But I know this. Your children will sing songs about what we do here. Whether we win or lose, they'll remember that we stood, that we fought, that we refused to bow." The boy nodded slowly. Around them, the other rowers gripped their oars tighter. They were ready. September 29th, 480 BC. Dawn broke over Salamis like a wound opening in the sky. Red, bloody. On the mountain above the straits, Xerxes sat on his golden throne. He had ordered it carried up here specifically for this moment. Around him stood his generals, his scribes, his guards. They would record every detail of this battle. Which captains fought well? Which ships struck first? This would be the story told for 1,000 years, how Xerxes destroyed Greece. Below, his fleet packed the straits. So many ships they seemed to cover the entire water. Persian banners, Phoenician flags, Egyptian sails. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was unstoppable. Xerxes smiled, and then the Greek ships emerged from behind the island. Themistocles stood at the helm of his trireme, and he felt time slow down. This was the moment. Everything, his entire life, every decision, every gamble, had led to this. Behind him, 370 Greek ships formed into battle lines. In front of him, over 1,000 Persian vessels waited. The odds were impossible. The trap was perfect. He raised his hand. Attack. The Greek fleet surged forward. The rowers pulled with every ounce of strength they had. The drums beat. The officers shouted. And the bronze ram struck. The first Persian ship never saw it coming. The Greek trireme hit it amidships with a sound like thunder. Wood splintered. The Persian vessel rolled, spilling men into the water. Then, the second ship. The third. The fourth. The Greeks moved like sharks through blood. In the open sea, the Persians would have surrounded them, overwhelmed them with numbers. But here, in these killing waters, numbers meant nothing. The Persian ships were packed so tightly they couldn't maneuver, couldn't turn, couldn't coordinate. When one tried to attack a Greek ship, it crashed into its own allies. When one tried to retreat, 3 more blocked its path. They were trapped in their own fleet. And the Greeks knew these waters like they knew their own names. On his mountain throne, Xerxes stopped smiling. He watched a Phoenician warship, one of his best, get rammed by a Greek trireme. Watched it split in half. Watched hundreds of men drown. He watched an Egyptian ship catch fire. Watched the flames spread to the vessels beside it. Watched the fire leap from ship to ship like a living thing. He watched his carefully planned formation collapse into chaos. Ships were colliding, burning, sinking. Officers were screaming orders that no one could hear. Rowers were abandoning their posts, diving into the water. The immortals, his elite troops, drowned in their golden armor, too heavy to swim. "My lord," one of his generals whispered, "we should recall the fleet." Xerxes couldn't speak. His mouth was dry. His hands were shaking. This wasn't supposed to happen. Persia didn't lose. Persia was unstoppable. Persia was. He watched a Greek ship ram straight through one of his flagships, watched it sink in seconds. Persia was losing. In the water, the old fisherman's grandson fought for his life. He had begged the commanders to let him row. He was small, they said. Too young, they said. But Greece needed every hand. So now he pulled on his oar with bleeding palms, tears streaming down his face, as the ship rammed into a Persian vessel. The impact threw him forward. Men screamed. Wood exploded, but they backed away and attacked again. 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 His arms were on fire. His lungs were burning. But he didn't stop, because his grandfather was watching from the shore. Because his mother had hugged him that morning and whispered, "Make them remember us." Because if they lost, everyone he loved would die. So he rowed. By midday, the sea was red. 200 Persian ships were sunk or captured. Bodies floated everywhere, thousands of them. Persians who couldn't swim, weighed down by armor. The survivors fled in panic. Some crashed into rocks trying to escape, some ran aground. Some simply gave up and surrendered. The Greek fleet pursued them without mercy. This wasn't war anymore. This was revenge. For Athens, for Thermopylae, for every Greek city burned and every Greek life lost. On the shore of Salamis, the old fisherman fell to his knees. He watched the Persian fleet break. He watched his grandson's ship, still fighting, still ramming, chase down a fleeing enemy vessel. And he wept. Not from sadness, from joy, from relief, from disbelief. They had won. We won. Around him, thousands of refugees screamed and cheered. Mothers held their children. Old men embraced. Strangers wept together. The impossible had happened. Greece survived. On his mountain throne, Xerxes stood and walked away. He didn't watch the rest of the battle. Couldn't. His empire, stretching from India to Egypt, the greatest power the world had ever known, had been defeated by fishermen, by farmers, by a handful of wooden ships. He returned to his tent and gave the order. "We're leaving. Recall what's left of the fleet." We returned to Persia. His generals protested. The army was still intact. They could still win on land. But Xerxes knew the truth. Without the fleet, the army was stranded. No supplies, no reinforcements, no escape route. It was over. He had lost, and the world would never forget it. 1 year later, at Plataea, the remaining Persian army was destroyed. The Greco-Persian Wars ended. Persia never again invaded Europe, and in the century that followed, something extraordinary happened. Greece, this tiny collection of bickering city-states, gave birth to Western civilization. Democracy emerged in Athens. The idea that citizens could vote, could choose their leaders, could have a voice. Philosophy flourished. Socrates questioned everything. Plato imagined perfect societies. Aristotle studied the natural world. Theater, art, literature exploded. Aeschylus wrote plays about the war. Herodotus recorded the history. Mathematics and science advanced. Pythagoras, Euclid, Archimedes. Medicine progressed. Hippocrates established the foundations of healing. All of this, all of it, happened because Greece remained free, because one man understood that wars aren't won by the strongest, they're won by the smartest. Themistocles lived for 20 more years after Salamis. He never became king, never became a god. In fact, Athens eventually exiled him. Politics, jealousy, accusations. He died in Persia, of all places, working for the very empire he had defeated. But none of that mattered, because the world he saved went on without him. Democracy spread, knowledge grew, civilization advanced. The Spartans at Thermopylae lit the fire of resistance, but Themistocles at Salamis forged that fire into a blade that cut down empires, a blade that carved freedom into history, a blade that changed everything. Today, if you visit Salamis, you can still see the straits. The water is calm now, peaceful, blue. But if you listen, really listen, you can almost hear it. The sound of oars beating, rams striking, men screaming. The sound of the day the world changed. The day a handful of farmers and fishermen defeated the greatest empire on earth. The day humanity learned that courage and intelligence matter more than numbers. The day freedom won. And the day that made everything else possible. This is the story of Salamis. This is the story of Greece. This is the story of us.